You're watching YouTube, the cable access of the 21st century. It's Wednesday, it's 4 p.m. where I am, and it's time to talk about movies and answer your questions. Welcome to Dan's World. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Dan's World. We are live. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Always the question on the top of my mind when I start the show, because it's genuinely about a 75% chance the answer is yes, and a 25% chance the answer is no. We've got a lot of stuff to get to today. We are going to talk about the Academy and its decision not to theatrically screen any of this year's Academy Award nominees. You might think that you know my stance on this, but you might also be wrong. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about those mythical tax filings that will reveal the actual price of a Hollywood blockbuster. This one is Snow White from last year. Remember that? Not many people do, and for good reason. But we finally know how much it cost, or at least a good idea of it. And we're going to look back at my projections from last year to see how they might have matched up with that. We are also going to take your questions, as always. I put out a call before the show started asking what people wanted me to cover on today's show in addition to what I'd already prepped. And the number one answer was the Super Bowl halftime show. So get ready for that, because I never thought we'd be at a time when the Super Bowl halftime show would be a controversial topic beyond the artist playing, but that's the time we live in, so I'll let you know what I thought about that. But if you want to ask your questions, you can leave a super chat down below. I will definitely get to all of those questions. If I have time, I'll try to loop back around and get to some others that were asked in the chat, although everybody's been amazing with super chats the last few times I've done the show, and they've taken up the entire runtime of the show. I think we did almost 2 hours last week, so I will be answering what you want to hear and what you want to hear about today. But before we do, I hate to do this. It's 2 weeks in a row, but we have to start the show off on a little bit of a bummer, a little bit of a sad note. This was news that broke earlier today. James Vanderbeek passed away. It was announced earlier today by his family. He has been battling colorectal cancer for the last couple of years. Had been in the news toward the end of last year. There were some benefit shows for him. Unfortunately, his family announced today that earlier he passed away. Now, if you don't know James Vanderbeek, you are probably not from a certain time or a certain era. I certainly did, because of Dawson's Creek, which is a show that started airing in the late 90s. And I have talked about on this channel many, many times before the fact that Dawson's Creek holds a special place in my heart because James Vanderbeek played the main character. He played Dawson. That character was a kid in high school. He loved Steven Spielberg. He wanted to be a director when he grew up. That was basically me in high school. Like Dawson, I also fell in love with Joey Potter, aka Katie Holmes. Had a big crush on Katie Holmes at the time. And it was just very sad to hear. I knew that he had not been in good health. I had hoped that maybe he was on the upswing. It is a tough disease to fight. The family, I don't believe, as of earlier this afternoon, had announced a specific cause of death, but we do know that he had been fighting colorectal cancer for many years. He moved on to Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23. A lot of people that weren't around for Dawson's Creek saw him in that show. He did Rules of Attraction back in the early 2000s, which kind of transitioned him for me from high school to college, because that movie came out, I think, my freshman year of college. I really liked him in that. He was in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, in what I thought was a very funny part. And by all accounts, he just seemed like a good guy. I mean, every interaction I saw with him out off screen with people, with fans, etc., he just seemed like a good guy. And I hated when I heard that he was sick. And it was very sad for me today when I saw that he had passed away. And it is a reminder, I've got a really good buddy, Kevin Smets, the Smasher, who was a part of the Movie Trivia Schmodown. He and I were on the same team for a year. Just a great guy. And he also had colorectal cancer. He fought hard. He fought a good fight, as I'm sure James Vanderbeek did. Luckily, Smash is still with us, and Kevin has done amazing things with advocacy for screening for cancer for people that are on the other side of it. To this day, I mean, he's a friend of mine who I am just in awe of because of his grace and his bravery and everything in the face of colon cancer. And thankfully for all of us, he's still around and still cancer free. But this is just a reminder. His advocacy inspired me to get an early screening because of family history. And I had to really convince my doctor to recommend it. It was not easy because right now I think the guideline is that you should start getting screened at 45 years old. I was definitely not 45 years old. This was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. I was able to get finally approved for an early colonoscopy, and they actually did remove some precancerous polyps, some material that, if I had waited until 45, who knows? And I thank Kevin every time I see him for staying on everybody about early screening and about talking to your doctor and seeing if it's medically the right thing for you to do. I had another colonoscopy last year. It came back totally clean. I'm going to keep getting colonoscopies at regular intervals. And we seem to be hearing these stories more and more of younger and younger people that are getting these types of cancer. And so hopefully, perhaps this will continue to maybe get people to get checked, to talk to their doctors, to get screened, because this is your health. It's your life and it's your health. And I was very, very sad to see that James Vanderbeek had passed away. So as always, my heart and my condolences go out to his fans, to his friends, and to his family. So let's move on now to the thumbnail story, I guess you would call it. And I thought that this was interesting. And again, you might think I know where I fall on this, but this was something that actually I think was announced a week or two ago. But there were members of the Academy, which is the organization behind the Oscars, the Academy Awards, who have really started to stir up some noise about this. Now, if you don't know how the Academy works, before the Academy Awards, there are screenings of all of the movies for your consideration screenings. The Academy does some of these. They do them in San Francisco. They do them in New York. They do them in London. They do them in Los Angeles. There are studios that also sponsor for your consideration screenings. And these are all theatrical screenings where you go and you see it on a big screen. The Academy also has something called the Academy Screening Room, which they've had for a little over 5 years now, which allows people to watch nominees and to watch movies that are up for nomination at home. It's something similar to what Critics' Choice rolled out a couple years ago. I'm part of the Critics' Choice organization, and there is now a service where we can watch the films that studios send for consideration at home through this streaming service that is exclusive to Critics' Choice Award winners, or sorry, not a winners, but a Critics' Choice Award voters. And to be honest, that's made it so much easier for me because you don't have to wait for stuff to come in the mail. You can try to find a lot of these movies in theaters, but especially for people that aren't based in New York and Los Angeles, they can be a little hard to find. So it has helped me to see more movies at the end of the year. But the Academy, I guess, has stirred up some controversy because they sent out an email to members saying that starting this year, they are not going to show movies that are Oscar nominated for Academy members on the big screen. So they will not hold Academy-sponsored theatrical screenings of Oscar nominees. And immediately, a lot of Academy members started reaching out to the Hollywood Reporter, who reported this news saying, well, this isn't right. You can't do this because these movies need to be evaluated on the big screen. I think that the quote that THR ran from these unnamed Academy members was, you can't evaluate movies like Avatar, Fire and Ash, and Frankenstein on the small screen. You have to see them on the big screen, which for me, if I was an Academy member, when it comes to Frankenstein, I wouldn't be calling the Academy saying that. I'd be calling Netflix and saying that, because to the vast majority of people that aren't part of the Academy, you can't see Frankenstein on the big screen. That's kind of Netflix's thing. It's one of the things that's holding up the whole Warner Brothers thing, is they're not exactly committed to the big screen experience. And do I find this sad? Yes, I do. I do find it sad, but it's also kind of part of the evolving time. And I want to draw your attention to the subheadline on that story I showed you. The Academy said that the reason that they're eliminating these screenings is that they cost them thousands of dollars to put on, and an average of 5 members would show up for these post-nomination screenings. So these movies would be nominated for Oscars. The Academy would sponsor a screening in a theater, and an average of 5 members would show up to each one of these screenings. So yes, the Academy made this decision, but it sounds to me as if the blame, if you want to assign blame to it, lies on the people that aren't showing up. And this is not uncommon. I think this happens with any organization. It's kind of what I call the All My Movies effect. All My Movies was a show I used to do here on this channel, and I loved doing the show, but it was very time intensive, and it just didn't draw a whole lot of viewership. Given how much time I put into it, given the time investment for it, and I tried it, and I gave it a year, I think, and I tried different formats and moved it, and it started as audio. I moved it to video. I moved it to this channel. And it just never did enough. And so I said, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do this anymore due to, kind of lack of interest compared to the resources that are put in, which is what the Academy is saying. Excuse me. And a little burpy today. And I still hear from people saying, I love that show. Why aren't you doing it anymore? And it's because you do at a certain point as an organization have to weigh how much am I putting into this resource wise versus how much am I getting out. And if the Academy is booking these theaters and doing these screenings and 5 people are showing up, I can't say that I blame them. It's obvious that a lot of Academy members, maybe the majority of Academy members, are now choosing to stay home and watch these movies. So I would say that if there's Academy members that are upset about this, they don't need to call the Academy and the people that made the decisions. They need to call their fellow members and say, hey, listen, these movies need to be seen on a big screen. That's how I think we should evaluate them. So we as members need to start going out to these screenings, because I think it's unrealistic to ask the Academy to keep doing these events, to keep shelling out this money, if basically an average of 5 people are showing up, if almost nobody is showing up. There are still opportunities to see movies on the big screen post-nomination. And again, this is after Oscar nominees are announced. There are a lot of the studios that will still sponsor theatrical screenings for Academy members that'll say, hey, we're putting on a screening, come see it. So you could get it that way. God forbid you could buy a ticket and go see it in a regular movie theater with regular people. I know that's not an option for some of the more high profile Academy members, but there are still options for the movies that are still in theaters. But I think that this is an example of people getting upset over the behavior of the majority of other people in their organization. I wish it wasn't this way, but I think the only way that you could try to course correct here and go backwards is for the Academy to say, okay, we're removing the at-home streaming option for people. So now you can only go out and see it. But I think that makes Academy members maybe less likely to see nominees. You know me, I'm an advocate for the big screen experience, but I think that there is a certain amount of reality that you have to inject into your hopes and dreams. And I think this is just another sign of the changing of the times. The Academy's made it what more people think is more convenient. And honestly, as somebody in a different group, a critics group, it is more convenient. I can see more movies if I'm able to watch them at home and squeeze one in, in an hour and a half or 2 hours where I wouldn't have time to go to a theater and buy the ticket and sit there in the trailers and the driving back and forth. I can squeeze more movies in, and there are more available to me. So yes, this is definitely causing outrage. And I think on its surface, it looks really bad, but I think it really is just the reality of the situation. It's a sign of the times. And, if there wants to be change in the Academy, I think the people that are upset about this need to start talking to their fellow members and not necessarily the Academy. So anyway, that's my take on that. Let's get to this other story that I found, and it regards Snow White, which came out a little over a year ago at this point. Now, if you don't know, when I talked on Charts with Dan all the time about movies and budgets, etc., I would always say it's really tough to nail down what the budget of a movie is because it's all guessing. You have reported numbers in the media, but the studio almost never comes out and says, this was the exact budget of this movie. It's a bit of guesswork. The exception to that is when a movie is filmed in the UK. The UK has a tax rebate program where there's a certain amount that the country gives back to a production that spends X amount of dollars if they make the movie in the UK. But to get that money, the studio, or not the studio necessarily, but the company that is running the film, every film is basically its own company, basically its own LLC. And so the company that is running that film, or that's been assigned to that film, has to file taxes with the UK government saying, this is how much money we spent in your country making this movie, so that they can then get that tax rebate. And because it's a filing with the government, this is public knowledge. And so Snow White was made in the UK, and these tax filings, which run through the end of 2024, have now been made public. And so we now know the actual cost of Snow White. This was reported in Forbes. The filings show that the company, which I believe is Hidden Heart, was the company that Snow White was run under, filed that it was a $336.5 million spend in the UK to make Snow White. So they spent that much money in the UK to make the movie, which Forbes reports is higher than the cost of Rogue One, Guardians of the Galaxy, Beauty and the Beast. However, the UK government gave Snow White back $64.9 million in rebates because of the money that they spent in the country. So that came out to a $271.6 million spend in the UK for Snow White. So according to tax filings, that's how much was spent to make the movie. $271.6 million. And then through their own calculations and reporting, Forbes determined that they believed, given what they projected the movie would bring back from the box office, that the movie lost $168.7 million at the box office, not including what was spent on marketing. So this does not include marketing costs. It also doesn't include what you would bring in ancillary. Again, this is box office gross only. And I mean, this isn't surprising. We knew that Snow White lost a lot of money, but this is what I found interesting. If you'll remember, I stopped doing my detailed profitability breakdowns on Charts with Dan a while ago because looking at some of the information that was reported about different movies, I thought, well, am I really getting the accurate information? Is this projection really that accurate, or am I just doing too much guesswork? And I stopped doing them. But before I did that, I actually did do one for Snow White. And so I went back and I checked my figures, and I wanted to check my findings versus what was just reported by Forbes and their research. And they certainly have much more access to insiders and analysts than I do. So this was my box office breakdown for Snow White. Last year in 2025, I looked at a bunch of different reports, and the reported budget, and I guess budget's not the right word, cost. Budget is how much a studio says they're going to spend, but cost is how much it costs to make. And I'll probably change this if I do this graphic going forward. But I estimated, according to the reporting, that $270 million was spent on Snow White, because that was what was reported in the media. And it turns out that that's true. Yes, they did spend $336 million initially, but with tax rebates, it was $271 million. That's what was reported at the time. So that number was actually accurate. Now, I did project $100 million in advertising costs. So I had the cost at $370 million. The gross is at 205.6. The net was $96.9 million. So my projected theatrical loss for Snow White was $273 million. That's because I included marketing. When you don't include marketing, my projected loss, based on my numbers of what was coming back from the box office, was $173 million. That's $5 million within what Forbes reported in their initial research and talking to people about what came back from the box office. So what this says to me is maybe what I've been able to do in the past on Charts with Dan with budget and return and the box office and everything else, maybe it's actually not as far off as I thought, because I got within $5 million with Snow White. Again, because they didn't include marketing costs and I did, my loss was bigger. But this has actually kind of made me rethink my rethinking of the budgetary breakdown, because I got pretty darn close on my own estimation there, based off of research on what was reported, based off of what I estimated was coming back from theaters around the world. And I was within $5 million of Forbes. I mean, you know, you know who I am, you know me. I don't really like to toot my own horn that much, but I was actually kind of surprised at how much my sleuthing was able to get to what this reported number is. So, you know, I'm going to go back and look at it again, maybe crunch some other numbers with movies as more of these tax filings become available, see what those numbers really are, because it turns out that the estimations that I did were pretty close. By the way, let's not bury the lead here. Yeah, Snow White lost $175 million theatrically before marketing. And I know that technically they could say, well, it made a profit because we shifted some money from the streaming division over into theatrical for its run on Disney Plus. But I doubt that it's getting $175 million from Disney Plus. If it is, then that means Disney Plus is running in the red. I don't really think that merchandising was that much. I don't really think that there were a whole lot of product tie-ins that were very lucrative to the film. I don't think that you'd probably be able to license it out to anybody for a whole lot of money, considering that it was not a popular movie and had a whole lot of baggage with it, associated with it off screen. So we knew that Snow White was a big money loser, but the reason I wanted to bring this up is because when you look at the actual numbers, number one, that budget that was reported in the trades, $270 million, was actually pretty accurate because it was after tax incentives. So whoever those sources were actually got it pretty correct. And then what was coming back from the box office, again, it seemed to pretty much match what Forbes had. So maybe I'll start doing these profit breakdowns again, because I was actually pleasantly surprised with how close I was on Snow White. All right, let's see. What else do I have for us today? Let me look at my rundown here. Snow White, James Vanderbeek, rest in peace, Academy screenings. So let's get to, first of all, I'm going to talk about when I put out a call, I said, what do you guys want me to talk about today? One of the top things is always movie fights. Whenever I ask, what do you guys want to know, et cetera, one of the first questions I always get is about movie fights. And, I don't own Movie Fights. Screen Junkies owns Movie Fights, so I can't bring the show back. Everybody says, when are you going to bring back Movie Fights and when are you going to do Movie Fights? I actually can't do that because I don't own the show. All I'll say is that if Fandom and Screen Junkies were to call me out of the blue and say, hey, we're doing a movie fight, we want you to come to LA, I would be on the first flight out I could get. I would absolutely be there. So if that call were ever made to me, rest assured, I would do it. But it's not something that's within my power. But the answer to, when will movie fights be back, or would you do another movie fight? The answer is, if the call went out, I would absolutely do it. And so that's what I'll say about that. And then the other thing, like I said, the number one thing that somebody asked was they wanted to know about the Super Bowl and some of the stuff, Mandalorian trailer, which I talked about, but they said, what did you think about the halftime show? And I almost was just like, oh, do I even want to talk about the halftime show? But, it is kind of a major pop culture event. It just has gotten mixed up in so many other things, as it seems like almost everything does. But the long and short of it is, first of all, I thought the production and the showmanship was fantastic. I mean, the actual physical production of the halftime shows, I think, it has never been better. I loved all the sets and the walking trees that people saw, people dressed as trees, the way that this set, would free flow. You had different settings going from guest to guest, Lady Gaga and Ricky Martin, the trailer, Pedro Pascal and Jessica Alba dancing out front, all of the extras, the dance, the choreography. I thought that was fantastic. And I love that it felt like a celebration. It really did feel like a very happy halftime show. And I actually have read a lot about from people who have Puerto Rican roots and Hispanic and Latino roots, about all of the things that Bad Bunny incorporated into the show that were specific references to historical events or to things, moments when they grew up. Like, I think the moment when he woke the little boy up that was sleeping on the chairs, saying that is so authentic to, going to parties when I was young and falling asleep and being woken up by I mean, it seemed like there was so much authenticity that was woven into it. And I thought that it did feel like a celebration. I mean, I loved the part at the end where he said, God bless America, and then included all of the other countries in the Americas. I mean, to me, it felt like a message of unity, and it just felt happy to me. Musically, is Bad Bunny the music that I listen to all the time? No, it's not. I don't listen to Katy Perry and Maroon 5 all the time either. And they did halftime shows within the last 10 years. It wasn't exactly my genre of music, but at the same time, I thought that the show was good. And I thought that the show was really well put on. And, not to get too deep into the weeds here, but I feel like when people ask, what do you think about the halftime show? I don't necessarily know if they're asking if I listen to Bad Bunny, because I don't, but I liked the show itself, and I liked the presentation of it. Um, Generally, again, if I step on any live wires, whatever, it is what it is. Uh, there's about 13 to 4, according to the U.S. Census, there's about 13 to 14% of the U.S. population that is Spanish speaking, which is tens of millions of people. It's about 40 million people that are Spanish speaking. I think that's a pretty significant part of the population. Um, I just disagree completely with the people that are like, this is not American. This is not a reflection of America. It is a reflection of, I think, a very substantial portion of America. It's not necessarily a reflection of white America, but it is a reflection of a large portion of America. And I think that we've kind of gotten caught up in this idea of, not we, I think that some people have gotten caught up in the idea that inclusion is exclusion, that in giving a stage to people that are maybe from a different background or a different genre of music than you listen to traditionally, that you are insulting or willfully excluding people who aren't from that background. And I just disagree with that fundamentally. I just don't subscribe to that. I'm not on the train that this was somehow an un-American halftime show because it was Spanish speaking. Because America, one of the great things I think about the United States of America is that we are a lot of different things. We and always have been. I think that's our appeal. At our best, I think the ideal of this nation is that we are that melting pot where we incorporate so many different cultures and people, and become, this very unique blend of different things. And so it was unlike any other halftime show that I'd seen, and I thought it was well produced, and I thought it had a good spirit, and I thought that it was very fun, and I think that it was energetic. I think it was a good burst of energy to what was a very bad game. I mean, that's the Super Bowl game itself was bad, especially that first half. I'm glad that there's a little energy to pep things up in the middle of that, because otherwise I might have fallen asleep at halftime because they just, it was not the best football game I've ever seen, is what I'll say. But yeah, I enjoyed it in the sense that I thought it was really well produced, and I thought it had great energy. And again, it doesn't have to be my kind of music or my specific favorite type of music for me to say that I enjoyed the show itself. And I think that a lot of other people who connected with it more found a lot of meaning in it, and appreciated the fact that this was a halftime show that reflected their culture and their past and their history and everything else. And I think that's great. So if that's a controversial opinion, then so be it. It's just going to have to be a controversial opinion. We're going to get to your questions next. But before we do, we actually have a sponsor this week. So I want to thank the sponsor of this episode, Mando, and we'll be right back and get to your questions. This video is brought to you by Mando. If you're like most people, when you leave the house, you make sure you look good, you make sure you feel good, but that doesn't mean anything if you don't smell good. Well, with Mando, you can scratch that worry off your list because Mando's whole body deodorant stops odor before it even starts. Mando is safe to use anywhere on your body and blocks odor all day with odor control up to 72 hours, and it's clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. Mando's deodorants come in stick and spray forms, and you can choose from a variety of scents like bourbon leather or my personal favorite, Mount Fuji. When I was in Utah going to movie screenings all day, I was out of my hotel room sometimes for 12, 14 hours straight, running from movie to movie, and then sitting in these kind of cramped little seats next to a bunch of strangers. But no matter how long I was gone, I was never worried about how I smelled because I trust Mando every single day to keep me smelling good. Some men mask their BO with scents. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. Mando's available right now in retailers near you, or you can head to shopmando.com because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with my exclusive code. Use code DAN at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. That's shopmando.com. Please support the show and tell them that I sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and say hello to long-lasting freshness. All right. Thanks to Mando for sponsoring this episode. And let's get to your super chats. We'll start with the first question, which is from AL or AI 109. What is your best and worst comic book movies of the 2020s? Well, the pickings are slimmer than they were in the 2010s. I'll tell you that much. I was able to see that pre show, so I was able to think about it a little bit before I came on the air. I honestly think that the Spider Man universe has given us the best and the worst of times because I love Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I love Spider-Man No Way Home. Those are both really, really good movies and two of my favorite comic book movies. But collectively, I don't think you can get worse than the unholy trinity of Craven, Madam Web, and Morbius. I mean, those three taken together are pretty horrific. So I would say that the Spider-Verse has given us amazing movies this decade and some of the worst that I've seen. So those are the first ones that come to mind. Zach Likes Movie 72 says Al Pacino's versus Leonardo DiCaprio's filmography. Take one and the other gets erased. Choose wisely. Ay, ay, ay. I mean, here's what I'll say. I love Leo. Leo is if Leo's in a movie right now, I'm gonna go see it. He is one of my favorite actors right now. It's like Leo and Denzel for me are probably, for my money, the two best actors in Hollywood right now. But if I have to erase somebody's filmography, it's got to be Leo's because I cannot say that I could erase Godfather and Godfather 2 and Dog Day Afternoon and Serpico. And that's just what Al Pacino did in the 70s. Um, I can't erase those movies from film history. Would it be difficult to live in a world without Titanic and Wolf of Wall Street and The Departed? Absolutely, it would be. Leo has been in some incredible movies, but I can't say that I would erase Pacino's filmography over Leo's. There's just too many stone cold American classics. And I know Pacino's made some crap too. Leo's got a better batting average, but Pacino has got some absolute landmark unerasable American films. So I got to go with Leo's, but that's a terrible choice to make. Dylan Fitzsimmons says favorite action movie. I mean, I feel like action movies kind of are live in their own world. RoboCop, Predator, Terminator 2 jump to mind. The Raid movies, specific or especially Raid 2, although I also love the first Raid film, definitely are up there. The John Wick movies collectively I really enjoy. But the 80s trinity for me, or I guess it'd be the 80s and early 90s trinity would be Predator, RoboCop, and Terminator 2. Zach Goff 7796 says, "Hey Dan, are you familiar with fellow YouTuber Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic? He's a fan of yours. I found out about your channel from him." Yeah, so Doug actually came out a couple times to do stuff for Screen Junkies. He came out to LA once, and then we did a movie fight with him once in, I want to say, Chicago, which was the infamous Han Solo versus Indiana Jones fight that he and I did. And I actually believe I owe Doug an email because he reached out to say hi early this year. And just the year's just been so crazy for me to start off with that I have not had a chance to get back to him. But yeah, no, we met a couple times, and he's been very supportive of the channel and has always had very kind words to say since I started out my own stuff. So yeah, I know Doug, and I owe him an email. S Venus or Svenus 97 says, "Yay, I'm here for a live show. Have you seen many movies from Southeast Asia? Would you like to see more and being nominated in the Oscars, etc.?" I mean, I guess would the Raid movies count? I don't know exactly where the regional lines are drawn around Southeast Asia, but I think that the Raid movies would count. So I'm not as well versed in really international cinema as I should be. But yes, I have seen a lot of them, and I want to see all different kinds of movies. I mean, again, I don't know with No Other Choice if that would be considered from the region, but I think that should have been nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and it wasn't nominated for any this year. So yes, Southeast. I would love to see representation as far as all world cinema. But I have also enjoyed movies from Southeast Asia. Dylan Fitzsimmons also says, "How did you become a Cardinals fan?" Well, I was born and raised here in Arkansas, and there are no professional sports teams here in Arkansas. So if you want to be into pro sports, you got to go regional. And so the Cardinals were the closest team here to Arkansas. It was about a 5-hour, 6-hour drive from where I grew up to go to St. Louis. So I went to a lot of Cardinals games, probably once every year or 2 years, I'd go to a Cardinals game, and I just became a fan of the team. Yeah, my mom also says that when she was pregnant with me, so that'd be 1982, I think that was the year that the Cardinals won the World Series. And my mom always said that when they won, I kicked. So she said she always knew I was going to be a Cardinals fan. Emir Hades says Spielberg ranked video before Disclosure Day. Maybe actually, so I rewatched all of Spielberg's movies like 2 or 3 years ago with the intention of doing a Spielberg ranked video. Same with the James Bond movies, and just haven't had time to commit to a project that big. But I've got the research done, which is the hard part. So if I can get all of the writing done, which is actually probably harder than the research, but I've got time. Yes, that's a distinct possibility. Blackbag 17 says, "Hey Dan, what was your time in Atlanta like? What area did you live in? What were your favorite local spots? As an ATLian, I'd love to know." I've never actually lived in Atlanta. I visited a couple times, but my local spots would be the aquarium and the Coke Museum. That's and where they did the Schmodown, because that's where I went the last time I was in Atlanta. So no, unfortunately, no, I've never lived in Atlanta, so I don't have any local spots. Again, unless you like to hang out at the museum and the Coke Museum, or at the aquarium and the Coke Museum. Tim DeRoochter, I'm so sorry, Tim, says, "Hey Dan, my 5-year-old son is completely obsessed with the 1965 Super Marionettation series Thunderbirds. Dad is so proud. Have you ever seen this staple of UK television? Any nostalgia for it?" I remember there was a movie made of it, and I've seen clips of it. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched Thunderbirds. I'm trying to remember if that's, I know it's a show like Thunderbirds. It might actually be Thunderbirds. And That Thing You Do, it's one of my favorite moments with Steve Zahn. There's a TV on in the store where Guy Patterson works, Tom Everett Scott, and he's like, he points to the show, and it is a marionette show. He's like, "Do you know, look at these, they're puppets. They're on strings. They're not real. They're puppets." And he's like, "Yeah, I know." I think that was Thunderbirds. If not, it was an American knockoff. But no, I haven't really seen Thunderbirds, but I am aware of Thunderbirds. Dylan Fitzsimmons says favorite Best Picture winners. I mean, again, it's always tough for me to catalog a large number of movies in my head off the top of my head. Oppenheimer is my favorite recent Best Picture winner for sure. The classics, obviously, like The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. But some of my favorite movies like Network and Jaws did not win Best Picture. Not a lot of my favorite movies from the 80s were Best Picture winners. Amadeus I definitely love, but Goodfellas didn't win in the early 90s, and Raging Bull didn't win in the early 80s. So I would say it's much more common for me to like movies that were nominated for Best Picture almost more than the actual Best Pictures themselves. But if you sat me down, I'm sure I could probably give you some more. But yeah, recently I'd say Oppenheimer is definitely my favorite, and then the two Godfather movies. Obviously, it's a basic answer, but it's true. West Side Story, also another one of my favorites. Jordan Collins 444 says the Guilty or Great podcast did the virtual Sundance, and we felt Josephine was the best of the 15 movies we saw. We also love the musical. Yeah, I mean, Josephine was. It seemed to be the consensus favorite. It was at least in most people's top 3 or top 5. The musical I also really enjoyed, which was produced by a fan of the channel here, who I actually had met up with when I was in Park City. Was one of the producers on that movie. It's still shocking. It's still surprising to me that Josephine has not been acquired. The movie I Want Your Sex, which is from Greg Araki, was acquired this week, and Josephine has yet to be acquired. I just think the studios don't know what to do with it or how to market it, because it is difficult subject matter. But even given that, it's shocking to me that the movie hasn't been acquired yet, because I really liked it as well. Cartoon 49 says ranked Best Picture winners this past decade. I feel bad. I feel like people maybe think I have more of an encyclopedic knowledge than I do. My brain is not great. Especially as I get older. So hang on, let me look this up here. Best Picture Oscars. I'm going to try not to take too much time here, but you did ask, and I already kind of shoved off one ranked question. So let me look up here the winners and nominees. I already said that Oppenheimer is my favorite, a recent Best Picture nominee. So if we're going from 2016 to this year, I would probably go Oppenheimer number one, and again, pretty easily number one. Then probably Parasite. I would say Parasite would be next. And we'd probably throw in Everything Everywhere All at Once in there at number three. And then it doesn't, there's not a whole lot of separation between the rest. I would say Anora would be there, or sorry, Shape of Water would be next, then Anora, and Moonlight. Probably Moonlight, then Anora, then Coda, which I liked, but there's nothing wrong with it. Then I'd say probably Nomadland and Green Book last. Yeah, that's what I'd probably say. If we're going from 2016 to 25, 26, if you want to say Spotlight would be in there, Spotlight would be there somewhere in the middle. But yeah, off the top of my head, that would be my rankings of the last Best Picture winners this past decade. The Magician says, sorry, who would you rather write a movie with, Alex Kurtzman or Roberto Orsi? Really? I mean, I don't know either of them, but from what I've heard, Kurtzman maybe is a little less out there. So I'd go with Alex Kurtzman. Plus, we could talk about Star Trek. I mean, really talk about Star Trek. Dylan Fitzsimmons says, is it normal to love comic book films without growing up a comic fan or enthusiast? I think it is. I don't think that I think one of the reasons that movies like Iron Man and the MCU and some of the DC films took off is because they didn't just appeal to comic book fans. They were great stories about great characters who happened to be superheroes. So yeah, I think it absolutely is. Dylan Fitzsimmons says, thoughts on Adam McKay as a writer-director. I tend to like his movies a little bit more than many. Don't Look Up. I was a big fan of Vice. I love The Big Short. Yeah, I like Adam McKay. I think he's really good. I think that he's kind of underestimated, and that's not even to touch the stuff he did in the comedy genre. Samuel Adam Wright said, Dan, if you get the time, Marvel's Wonder Man is well worth a watch. It's up there with WandaVision for me, and is only 8 30-minute episodes. Love all you do and wishing you all the best from the UK. Thank you, Samuel. I appreciate it. I've heard really good things about Wonder Man. It got kind of lost in the shuffle of everything that was going on in January for me, and then Sundance, obviously. But I've heard really good things about Wonder Man, and it is on my list. It's just that there's so much else that's happening right now. Zeusiful says, I asked my question on Patreon, so just plug that. Okay, yeah, I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/Dan Murrell. Thanks for the plug. I feel like I should be paying you for the plug. Yeah, I do. I also do an AMA monthly on my Patreon. So if you want to go ask a question there, and it also is just kind of an extra way if you want to support the channel and support what I'm doing here. Yeah, patreon.com/Dan Murrell. Also do an AMA monthly there. Thank you, Zeusful. Dwayne Fernandez 2644 says, do you think the industry could survive another strike? I heard that SAG has started negotiating again. Yeah, so I think the 3 years, believe it or not, is coming up this year. So they have to go back into negotiations. That's normal, by the way. I've seen some people saying like, oh no, SAG is negotiating again. This is a normal thing that happens. From what I've read, the negotiation this time is mainly focused on health, the pension and healthcare and all that, and the fact that the SAG-AFTRA healthcare system is under a lot of strain because there's been a lot less work. And I hear that that's going to be the big driving force of the negotiation. Sean Astin, by the way, is now the president of the Screen Actors Guild. So he's going to be the face that you see probably talking about all these. So I've seen or heard no indications that there's any sort of a strike imminent. All three guilds, writers, directors, and actors are negotiating with AMPTP again. It does not sound like there's any sort of imminent strike action, but were one to happen, it would be absolutely disastrous. Do I think the industry could survive? I think that it would inflict a massive amount of extra damage on the industry and leave it in even worse shape. I think that some form of the industry will always survive, but it would be catastrophic if there's another strike right now. Boom or Bust says, how authentic do you think that streaming metrics are? I've been given no reason to believe that they're not authentic. I use Netflix and Nielsen on Charts with Dan. I know that there are other ones like Illuminate out there. And people ask, why haven't you used it? And I think it's just, I'm less comfortable with the collection, how that information is collected, and I'm less assured of the accuracy of it. But Netflix numbers are directly from Netflix. If those numbers were proven to be inaccurate, then that would be fraud almost on the part of Netflix. And they're the only streaming service that provides numbers in the depth and detail that they do. So I have confidence in Netflix's numbers and Nielsen's numbers. I mean, the reason why they are delayed by a month is because they take the time to measure it across streaming platforms. So I have no reason to believe that the streaming metrics are not authentic. And until I see otherwise, I don't present anything on my show, for example, on charts that I don't believe is authentic or that I don't have good reason to believe is authentic information. Justicus26 says, hey, Dan, since you saw the new David Wayne movie and have mentioned you're a big fan of his work, have you ever seen They Came Together? I love it. I have not seen that. I should probably see that, but no, I haven't seen it. I'll put it on the list. Damian Fenton says, hi, Dan, what are your favorite Bond movies from before the Daniel Craig era? I've got to be very careful. God forbid I say Daniel Craig on these internet airwaves, or I'm going to hear about it. The Daniel Craig era. And I understand that's actually his name. I'm being extra careful. Goldfinger, although that becomes more tinged as time goes on, as you see and understand new things in the movie. The Spy Who Loved Me is one of them. I think Roger Moore made a couple of all-time great ones. I'm way higher on The Man with the Golden Gun than most people. I really like The Man with the Golden Gun, and I'm lower on Her Majesty's Secret Service than a lot of people. The Living Daylights, I think it is a hugely underrated James Bond film. And then, GoldenEye. And I'm also a Tomorrow Never Dies fan. It's not perfect, but I also love Pierce Brosnan. He's my Bond. He's the one the first one that came out when I was a kid that was coming out in theaters. So I have a kind of sentimental attachment to Pierce Brosnan, even though I hate Die Another Day. His other movies I enjoy. Yeah, I think that would be briefly some of my favorite James Bond films. Spencer C. 1996 says, did you ever watch the Fargo TV series? Incredible. I watched the first 3 seasons of Fargo and enjoyed them. I just kind of fell off. But yes, what I saw was very good. The Master of Gaming 4149 says, do you think Psycho Killer will overperform? I don't know a whole lot about Psycho Killer. I've heard about a little bit about it, but not enough for me to project whether or not it would over or underperform. I would love for any movie to overperform at this point, because I think that Iron Lung has been a nice little shot in the arm for the box office, where maybe they didn't expect it over the last couple weekends. And then we'll see what happens with Wuthering Heights this weekend. Ferris EB says, late again, but made it 2 weeks in a row. Did you happen to see All That's Left of You, which made the Academy shortlist but didn't get nominated? It's my favorite of 2026 so far. I was talking to somebody, another guy, Omar, at Sundance, who sent me a message, and we met up. And I believe he was the one that talked to me about this and told me how good All That's Left of You was. I remember covering it on charts on the specialty box office with the per theater averages and the specialty numbers. But he was telling me how good that movie is. I have not seen it, but I've heard it's very, very good. So again, that goes on the list for me to see kind of post Oscars, pre-summer movie season. Z Jacob Ball says, have you been watching A Night of the Seven Kingdoms? I watched the first episode and enjoyed it. I have not yet caught up, but I've heard very good things. I'm bad at keeping up with TV shows in real time. The only one that I actually am watching right now as it comes out is The Pit. I love The Pit so much. And I make it a point to try to watch the new episode the day that it comes out, which is unheard of for me at this point. I've also been watching a lot of the Olympics, so I need to catch up with Night of the Seven Kingdoms, because I liked the first episode, other than the poop joke. I get why they did the poop joke, but to me, it was just like, okay, I get it. It's not like the other shows. Let the show do that. I wasn't a huge fan of that. Spencer C. 1996 says, The Americans is another A+ FX show. Check it out. Trust me, I've heard The Americans is fantastic. I have enough TV backlogged to last me a lifetime. The Master of Gaming 4149 says, do you think I Can Only Imagine 2 will make as much as the first? Also, do you think K-pop will make the top 5 when Scream 7 comes out? K-pops. I don't know. Is that different from, now I gotta look. Is K-pops different from K-pop Demon Hunter? Let's look here. K-pops. K-pop's 2024 comedy drama. I don't know a whole lot about K-pops, or I don't know if it's going to be a wide release or anything like that. So very possibly, I'd have to look at that whole weekend. I think Scream 7 will be number one that weekend. I can only imagine too. It's possible. I mean, that market is very reliable when it comes to box office, the sort of Christian faith-based market. They are very loyal and very reliable. So I think it's very much possible, especially if it's a good movie and it can have a little bit more of that crossover appeal. Dom from the start says five top of mind of your favorite character actors. Oh man, it's tough because character actors are tough to pull top of mind. I just watched Hard Eight last night for the first time, and I think Philip Baker Hall would qualify as a character actor. John Spencer, I think, would qualify as a character actor. Maybe would he? Toby Huss, would he qualify as a character actor? Again, maybe. It's tough to draw the line between what's a character actor and what's not a character actor. Again, it's like, would Ned Beatty count as a character actor? I think he is definitely in some movies. So that's top of mind. Those are the ones that jump out to me right off the top of my head, although I'm sure that there are a whole lot more. There's probably some of my favorites that I'm forgetting about. Again, William H. Macy. I think he counts as a character actor in some instances and maybe not in other instances, but I love him. I think that a great character actor can add so much to a movie or a TV show. And I think all of them have in certain instances. Jim 1242 says, are you watching Night of the Seven Kingdoms? It's great so far. Again, I got to catch up. Just got that first episode under my belt. Fluffy Pro says, what was the best thing you ate on your trip to Sundance? That's interesting because a lot of my food was kind of on the fly. There was a place, so not to bore you too much, but Main Street, which is all the pictures you see of Sundance, this year there were no theaters on Main Street. So I thought actually where I was staying was way away from the action, but I was actually pretty close to where I was, to where most of the theaters were, where the Ray and the Eccles and the library, which is kind of halfway between where I was staying and Main Street, the Holiday Village, which is where all the press screenings were. I was within 10 to 15 minutes walking distance for most of the theaters that I wanted to go to, but most of my food was on the fly. I will say that my kind of local place, my regular place where I would stop because it was so close, is a place called the Boneyard in Park City, which is a bar restaurant. And I have to say, I mean, they had bar food, but it was really good bar food. They had wings there that were fantastic, some great wings, and they were also like big wings. So if it was like, I don't want to eat a whole meal, but I'm also kind of hungry, I need something that'll tide me over for 5 or 6 hours, I would just get their wings, and they were fantastic. So this place, the Boneyard, was where I went to the most at Sundance, and that I really, really liked the food. And there were a couple other places, but I didn't, I wasn't really on a food tour. A lot of it was just grab what you can when you can. Adam Islam 3213 said, "Hey Dan, got to see Marty Supreme early like you did at Thanksgiving. How do free early screenings and A-list factor into box office numbers? Love the channel." Again, to all the research that I found, and I get the question about A-list a lot. As far as I know, A-list does not affect the cut that is sent to theaters. That's something that AMC takes on, unless AMC has maybe worked out some kind of a deal. But I don't believe that A-list affects the box office in any way. Early screenings, again, they are folded into the opening weekends. Now, for things like the mystery screenings and stuff, I don't know exactly how that's calculated for a movie. But any early screening that you see for a film just gets rolled into the opening weekend. Phil Smith 5500 says, "Hi Dan, will you be watching Spider-Man Noir or Spider Noir? And when do you think Sony will release the first trailer for Spider-Man Brave New Day?" Yeah, I'll definitely be watching Spider Noir because I love Nick Cage and I love that character from Into the Spider-Verse. Brave New Day, let's see. When is the release date on that? I'm sure I've got it in my calendar. That's December, right? Isn't that December? No, it's not December. When is it? Hang on. This is fun. This is a feature on the show called Dan Looks at His Calendar to see when Spider-Man's coming out. I should probably August. And that can't be right. August 31st? No. Is that right? Hang on. This is called Dan Does His Research that he should probably know. Spider-Man Brand New Day. July 31st. That's right, July 31st. July 31st, when are we going to see the first trailer? Soon, I would imagine. Very soon. At least the first teaser. I thought maybe we get something on the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine probably March, April at the latest. Dom from the start says Friday the 13th, followed by Valentine's Day, followed by Carnival here in Brazil this weekend. Any double or triple feature suggestions? Hmm. Well, I mean, Jason Lives is my favorite Friday the 13th movie. So if you're going to watch a movie on Friday the 13th, then I would probably suggest my favorite movie in the Friday the 13th series. So that would be Jason Lives. Valentine's Day, it's different for everybody. I've never been a big fan of Valentine's Day, particularly. So I generally would try to watch some sort of counter programming, comedy, good comedy. If you're feeling down on Valentine's Day, I'd say find a good comedy, something that you enjoy. If you're in a loving, committed relationship and you both love Valentine's Day, then don't necessarily have to watch a romance. Watch one of your favorite movies as a couple together. Don't feel like you have to watch a romantic movie on Valentine's Day. I'd say Valentine's Day, watch what feels right. Just navigate that day as best you can. And then, I would say Friday the 13th, Jason Lives for Friday the 13th, Valentine's Day, whatever feels right. And then Carnival in Brazil, I would imagine just go out and enjoy that. If not, I think I saw something that was go watch a great movie from Brazil for that third feature. Watch I'm Still Here from last year, or City of God. I think that's a Brazilian film. Watch a great movie from Brazil. So that's your third feature. Tim Schwagel says top five ranked list. Yeah. Listen, give me a couple days on Watch Mojo, and then I'll give you a top five ranked list. Emir Haiti says musical biopics ranked video before Michael. Maybe, but here's the thing with the ranked videos. The bigger they are, the more time it takes to watch everything and to produce the video. And, with Superman, for example, I spent so much time on that, watching so many movies, and it's kind of like all my movies. It did not perform well enough to justify the time that I put into it. So if you're talking about musical biopics, that could be 20, 30, 40, 50 movies. That is a lot of time to invest in one video. So if all the ranked videos I did were all getting like 500,000, 1 million views, and I could say, okay, great, I can sit down and take whole days to put aside to work on these, that'd be great, but they don't really. So any ranked videos I do have to be either long lead stuff where the time I invest is kind of spread out over a while, or short things. I'm working on one right now, maybe, that I think is kind of one of those shorter ones. There may have been a clue earlier in the show, but something like all the musical biopics ever made, that would just be hard for me to justify putting that much time into it. Let's see. Oh, we got that. Mark Brierly 6367 says, what suggestions would you have for keeping up with movie news and releases while avoiding spoilers and trailers? Well, that's tough, because it seems like everywhere that does movie news now also does spoilers. I'm trying to avoid everything with Avengers Doomsday. It seems like even people that I like to watch in this space, and I don't watch a whole lot of channels, are now all about Avengers Doomsday spoilers, and I don't want to know anything about Avengers Doomsday. It's next to impossible to avoid trailers. I try to, but also I feel like I kind of need to watch some of them. So I wish I had a better. I don't really have a good suggestion for you. I will say I don't market in spoilers here on this channel, and I don't do a whole lot of trailer reactions, but that's not to say I wouldn't say something that you might consider a spoiler. It is a very difficult thing to navigate movie news while avoiding some of those things. So unfortunately, I don't have any huge suggestions. I can just tell you we don't do a whole lot of that here, or I try not to. Needle Knight says, when a theater shows an old movie, but it's not an official re-release, do the box office numbers get reported? If it's not officially through a studio, then probably not. A distributor generally is going to be who's providing those numbers. So if it's just kind of a one-off thing, doubtful if it's not an official re-release. Clay 7729 says, Dan, going off that other question, what do you think would win Best Picture today if the last best 10 Best Picture winners were the nominees? It's hard for me not to say Oppenheimer. I mean, I think Oppenheimer, if it was the last 5 Best Picture winners, I think it's Oppenheimer and a runaway. If you include the last 10, I would say Moonlight, Parasite, and Oppenheimer would be the main contenders. But again, it's hard for me not to see how Oppenheimer would win it. I just don't see how it doesn't take it. Christian Unpronounceable says, "Hi Dan, have you heard of and/or are looking forward to the new vampire movie about my fellow Hungarian Bathory Erzsébet, starring Mina Suvari?" I have not heard about that film, but I'll keep an eye out for it. Ferris EB says, in memory of James Vanderbeek, how about 2 favorite performances from him that aren't Dawson's Creek or Varsity Blues? Well, I mean, come on, you're making me abandon I Don't Want Your Life, which, by the way, was a critical movie for me as a 16-year-old because it came out right after I turned 16, was able to drive, and I had that soundtrack on, and we went to see Varsity Blues and got turned away and snuck in. And James Vanderbeek was very closely tied into my teenage years. Well, Rules of Attraction, as I've said. God, it's tough for me to think of a bunch of James Vanderbeek stuff again off the top of my head. The one that really jumps to mind is Rules of Attraction. You threw out like 2 of the biggest ones. It's tough. It's like, best Spielberg movie, but you can't say Schindler's List and you can't say E.T. or Jaws. Okay, well, that's a little harder. Rules of Attraction is the one that really jumps into my mind. Damian Fenton says, I'm a huge Bond fan, and if I could give you a medal for saying The Living Daylights is underrated, I would, but I'll settle for the super chat. Thank you very much. If you haven't seen The Living Daylights, listen, when I grew up watching James Bond movies, as a probably adolescent going into my teenage years, I would always dread watching the Timothy Dalton movies because I was like, especially The Living Daylights, I was like, that movie's so boring. It's not, though. It's actually really good. If Daniel Craig if you take the script for The Living Daylights, and let's say that movie was made as like the second James Bond film after Casino Royale, and Daniel Craig had been in it, it would have been very highly acclaimed. That's what I believe. I think The Living Daylights is not well thought of because it just wasn't the type of James Bond movie, especially right after Roger Moore, that people were looking for. If you haven't seen it in a while or you haven't seen it at all, go back and watch it. It's actually a really good James Bond movie. That's what I think anyway. Dylan Fitzsimmons says, favorite Apple TV show. I haven't seen a whole lot. Severance in the Studio would both definitely be up there, but they're both also ongoing. How have you been? I like that. Says, how are studios like Disney able to get away with massive investments and implications of generative AI given the terms of the strikes? Well, it's so you can invest in AI. You can use AI in different areas of the studio. You just can't use AI for specific things. I am of the, at the time, I didn't think that the protections against AI that they negotiated were particularly strong. And I think that what we've seen in the last year or so has only underscored that. I think that Disney and the other companies are going by the letter of the agreement. And I think that there is way too much wiggle room in that agreement. So I think they can use AI all they want up to a certain point, and then I think those points are going to be up for negotiation, probably in 3 to 6 years. Dom from the Start says, favorite Nicole Kidman performance. I love the others. Moulin Rouge is tough to beat for me. She's great in Moulin Rouge, and I really love Moulin Rouge. That's a movie from the early 2000s that I don't hear talked about a whole lot anymore, but that I really enjoy. Yeah, I think it'd have to be Moulin Rouge. I mean, the sentimentalist in me says, you can't disregard Batman Forever, but she's actually not that good in Batman Forever. I just love that stupid movie. Austin Hurst says, I hear you mentioning hitting the occasional bar with friends on your channel from time to time. What is your drink of choice and favorite bar activity? I mean, I don't hit the bar as much as I used to. Trust me, I did plenty in my 20s and early 30s. Favorite drink just depends on the mood and the occasion. I mean, if it's just to hang out, I'll just have a beer. I like I'm not a big IPA guy, so I like a good lager, ale, a pilsner, a Hefeweizen, something like that. I'm not like a Guinness dark type beer, and I'm not an IPA guy. I don't like beer that sits too heavy. Even some Hefeweizens are too heavy for me because if I'm going to have a beer, I don't want it to make it. I don't want it to feel like I just ate a meal. Sometimes it'll feel like a gin and tonic kind of night. I mean that's kind of like if it's just I'm having maybe one or two drinks, and it's maybe a little more formal. Maybe I'm having dinner. I'll have a gin and tonic or something like that. Every once in a while, it'll be an old fashioned because why not? It's kind of a sip and drink. I think it just depends on the occasion. IO fan BLK says, good luck, have fun, don't die. Saw it last night. Great original movie. Definitely recommend and would love to hear your opinion. I am going to try to see it. I can't promise I'll see it this weekend, but I have heard good things about it. Ann Porkins, one of my favorite names, says, good day. Do you have a favorite baby? Mine is a tie between my nephew and Baby Driver. Thank you. I mean, I do now. My niece, who is now about 7 months old, is by far my favorite baby, hands down. Before, my nephews aren't babies anymore, so I couldn't say them. But my niece, number one favorite baby. Number two, Baby Houseman from Dirty Dancing. That's her name, right? Baby Houseman. Tim Schwagel says, any favorite books about film or film history? Easy Riders, Raging Bulls is always my go-to. That is a fantastic history of the 1970s and the emergence of the new cinema and Scorsese and all of this amazing Bonnie and Clyde and The Head and all of these movies. Bob Rafelson, such a great account of the 1970s. So yeah, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls is my favorite book about film history. And I think we're down to our last couple questions. So let's see. Alute One said, annoying that so many spoiled the death in Hamnet. Yeah, I tried not to in my review, and people like, why did you, everybody knows. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, I get it. It's kind of the what the story is based around, but I also didn't want to come out right and say it. Dallin Gilchrist says, have you seen Invincible on Amazon Prime? I haven't. I've heard really good things, but I have not seen it, and I should see it. There's just so much. There's so much stuff that gets made, and I've never been great about like binging a whole. There's some people that can sit and watch TV or something 8-10 hours a day. Even when I don't have anything to do, it's tough for me to do that. And there's so much stuff now that it's so hard to keep up. So I need to. Ferris EB, thank you very much, says, I've also become someone who mostly avoids trailers. However, I can't stop myself from watching One Piece live action trailers. Have you seen the latest one? Have you had anything spoiled or revealed about what's coming? I did watch the trailer for season 2, which I think the trailer came out yesterday, maybe, or the day before. No. So I've said it when the first season came out, and it's still true. My exposure to One Piece is 100% through this show. And I have not sought out, nor have I been received or been given any intel or anything about what's going to happen. I don't know who any of these new characters are or what the story is going to be or what happens in the story. I am 100% One Piece live action. So no, I haven't read anything about it. I don't know anything about it. I liked that second trailer. I think it looks like a lot of fun. I thought the first season looked like a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to season 2. Owen Cummings says, who would be your pick to direct a Nightmare on Elm Street reboot? I mean, it's tough to just not say Mike Flanagan because he does so much great in the horror space. I sound like a corporate lackey in the horror genre. Osgood Perkins could be an interesting choice. She had a new movie at Sundance this year, and her name escapes me. Natalie Erica James. So she had a movie called Saccharine that came out. It was in Sundance this year. It's been picked up by Shudder. She did a movie called Relic back in 2020. I think she also did that movie, the Rosemary's Baby prequel movie on Paramount Plus. I think that she's really a name to watch in the horror genre. And I think that she'd be pretty good at that, especially some of the stuff I saw in Saccharine. I think she could do it too. Dom from the start says, you're invited to be a co-writer on any upcoming TV or movie projects you've heard of. What's your pick? A co-writer. I like co-writer because writing it by myself, that's a lot of pressure. I can never presume that I would be able to write a huge franchise film on my own. A co-writer on any upcoming TV or movie projects that I've heard of. trying to think if there are any Star Trek series in development. I don't think I've heard of any that are in active development. It's all theoretical at this point. Because I would say whatever Star Trek project is coming up, I would love to get a crack at it. And you know what? If I get it wrong, then I can just shut my mouth about it. But I would like to bring, my love of the franchise to the franchise. It would really be something that I love. It's not something that I would be kind of cynical. Like, it's not going to be like, I'd write a Minions movie that doesn't suck. I can't think of a worse use of my time than writing a Minions movie, because it would be valueless to me, and it would be valueless to the people going, because it doesn't matter what I think. They know their audience, they serve their audience well. It would be something I'm like, hey, I think I could contribute something to this. So yeah, maybe whatever upcoming Star Trek movie or Star Trek TV show. I would love to, if the Star Trek Legacy gets made, which was talked about after Star Trek Picard, where you have the people from that character and from that show, and maybe you're bringing in some of the TNG people. If that ever got made, yes, absolutely. Throw me in there. I'd love to be in a writer's room for that. Just something that I love. So I'd say probably anything Star Trek would be my answer. Eric2995 says, has Aronofsky lost credibility as a director because of his AI show? And do you think other respected people in the industry will follow to try to normalize AI? It was, I think we talked a little bit about it last week. It was a curious choice for him at this moment in time to say, hey, I'm going to make a show about the Revolutionary War made completely with generative AI. You have to know how upsetting that's going to be to some people, because Darren Aronofsky is somebody who can open doors for people. I know that Caught Stealing didn't do that great, but I thought it was a really good movie. And his name has meaning, and his name means something in Hollywood. And so for him to sort of endorse AI in that way, a completely generative AI show, I think sends the wrong message. So I think that he probably did lose a lot of credibility with some people. And yeah, I think a lot of people are going to try to AI is being normalized right now. Did you see the Super Bowl? I mean, they're trying to sell it to us as the solution to everything. And I'm not a complete AI opponent. I think there are some limited applications where it can genuinely be used to assist existing human people, to make them more efficient at their jobs, not to replace people at their jobs, but to make them more efficient at their jobs so that they can perform their job better. It's less stressful for them. Not to cut down on manpower, but to use AI in limited applications where it can be useful. But yes, I think there are going to be a lot of people that try to normalize AI, because that's where the money is right now. The money is in AI. I am sure that there are AI entities that are throwing money or would throw money at an established Hollywood name to make a show or to do something in AI, because that normalizes it and it gets their product out there. The money is in AI. So yes, as long as there is that much money to be made in something, there will be people that will try to normalize it. If the last 10 years have proven anything to us, it is that wherever the money is, that is where people will try to normalize whatever that interest is, whatever that special interest is. And I think we're definitely going to see that with AI. We've got to navigate this very carefully over the next 5 to 10 years. Freakstomp95 says, do you have a vacation plan this year? You earned one. Well, I mean, I feel like I just went on one, even though I was working the whole time, which was Sundance. A pure vacation? I don't even know what that means anymore. I don't even know what that's like. I have taken a few, where it's like I'm gone for a few days where I don't work. But this idea of, even when I went to New Zealand for almost 3 weeks, I was doing some work there. I don't know what a real vacation is anymore, because I'm always working on something. Even if I'm having a good time and I'm spending 6, 8, 10 hours not working, there are always a couple of hours in the day or a half a day where I'm working on something. So do I have a pure vacation planned? No. There are a couple of trips planned that I'm looking forward to that are going to be kind of hybrid, but where I will get some time for myself to do some fun stuff. But no pure vacation planned. And it's just I don't even know what it's like anymore. But I have a lot of advantages to that too. I'm not complaining. Dom from the start says, most controversial ending to a movie in your opinion. I mean, controversial in what, like controversial as in I didn't like it, or controversial as in like societally controversial? Because I mean, societally controversial, I'd say probably like The Last Temptation of Christ, which really upset a lot of people. I mean, that the ending of that movie was literal blasphemy to some people, and it's tough to think of a movie that was that kind of just provocative and got so many people riled up. Controversial as far as like fan reaction, I mean, I still hear about The Last Jedi every day almost. And the ending to that movie with Luke Skywalker and everything obviously did not please a whole lot of people. Or you could throw Rise of Skywalker in there because that didn't please the other side of people. So I'd say the Star Wars sequels definitely were controversial as far as fan reaction or people that watched the movie. N Berrigan 12 says, "Hey Dan, have you watched Argentinian movies? If so, any that you enjoyed the most? You're an amazing critic. Thank you for your content." I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I'm sure that I've seen a few Argentinian films, but The Hand of God came out a few years ago. I remember really liking that movie. Let's see. I'm just doing a quick search here of any others that let's see, might have Argentine films. Let's see. Well, this is just I don't need a category of them. I just need a quick hint. The 100 greatest films of Argentine cinema, survey of 2022. Let's see. That's 1984 or 2000. This is fascinating. Let's watch Dan look up lists on Wikipedia. It's tough though, because I feel like I let you guys down because I do know a lot about movies, but I don't necessarily have it all right here on the top of my head. And you're seeing the reality of running a YouTube channel. When people say, "Oh, what's a YouTube channel like?" It's this. It's when I'm writing what I'm going to say, it's like 2 hours of this, of me going back and trying to remember things. Nothing immediately springs to mind, but as I've said, I need to be more versed in international cinema from all countries. Kyle Harlow says 100% agree on the Hims and Hers ad giving Elysium vibes. They know rich people like Steve Jobs die young of cancer and other diseases all the time, right? Yes, but I will say Steve Jobs, by all types of reporting, chose some very unconventional treatment methods for his disease. I think that if Steve Jobs had poured all of his money into different potentially ways to treat his illness, that he may not have passed away, or perhaps would have lived a little bit longer. That's just my opinion. And again, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe you subscribe to the approach that Steve Jobs took. That's just what I think. Yes, if you don't know what Kyle's talking about, so on my Super Bowl ad recap, I talked about the fact that the Hims Hers ad was dystopian to me, because it was basically like, all these rich people live forever and they have so much better medicine because they can afford it and you can't. They live a longer and better life. Well, now you can live like a rich person with Hims and Hers. You're still paying them. They're not giving this stuff away. But it was just so just like, wow, we're just straight up acknowledging the fact that health is a pay-to-play system at this point. So yeah, that just felt very dystopian to me. But yeah, no, I mean, it's the truth though. It is preventative care, regular care. It's the more money you have, the better treatment you have. And the less access you have to that treatment, the less money you have. That's just how it goes. Clay7729 said, Primate thoughts. I plan on watching it tonight. I'm hearing some pretty crazy things. I didn't see it. It's one of the movies that when it came out and was number one, I knew almost nothing about it. So have not seen it. So tell me what you think. Dom from the Start says, Scream 7 review when I see it, man. I don't have access to every movie. And I will tell you, I am willing to drive to see any movie that I feel like people would want to see an early review for. Here's the thing. The studios are not doing regional screenings for a lot of different movies. Wuthering Heights, it wasn't that I couldn't see it early because I didn't want to drive somewhere to see it. Did not show anywhere near me. No critic screenings whatsoever. Scream 7, I believe, I might not be screening. Paramount, I don't think, is doing any screenings. So first of all, I mean, it doesn't come out till, let's see, when does Scream 7 come out? We've got 2 weeks till it comes out. It hasn't even screened, I don't think, for any critics yet. Secondly, I'm getting to a point where I can't even drive 3 to 6 hours to see these movies early anymore because they're not available. Most likely the Scream 7 review will be out on the Friday morning that it comes out. I review them when I can see them. And the studios are drastically scaling back when anybody who does not live in New York or Los Angeles can see movies. So when I can, it's always my answer. When I'm able to see it, that's when I can see it. So, all right, that is it. That's all the questions I got. Please don't send in any more because I'm wrapping up the show and I don't want you to send in a super chat and not have your question answered. Thank you so much to everybody that answered or asked questions today. Thank you to everybody who watched, and thank you to everybody who's watching after we're live. I try to do this show every week at 4:00 Central Time. Right now we're on Central Standard Time. Eventually we'll be on Central Daylight Time. If I can't do the show, I'll be sure to let you know in advance if I possibly can. And I'm also going to try to do more of those community posts where I ask what people want to hear about before the show starts. That's where we got the Super Bowl topic from today, as well as answering your questions and asking your questions here. And thank you to everybody who sent in a super chat today. We were, an hour, 22 minutes today? That's crazy. That's great. So I appreciate you watching. Be sure to stay tuned. I'm going to see Wuthering Heights on tomorrow. So you'll have my review of Wuthering Heights on Friday morning. I may try to sneak in, send help, but I don't know. It's actually a pretty busy week because I'm also working on a video for this weekend. So we'll see if I can sneak in another video at some point this week, but look for my review on Wuthering Heights on Friday morning, another video this weekend. We're into the awards season. I've got some other fun stuff planned. So yeah, as always, just a bunch of craziness here on the channel. Thank you to everybody who watched. Thank you to everyone who sent in a super chat. Thank you to Mando for sponsoring this episode. We'll see you next time. Stay safe. Bye.